Hey everyone, Phillip here. Since we're all kind of trapped inside with nothing to do because of the coronavirus, I figured, let's put out another talking point episode to keep us all entertained. So today we're talking about G.I. Joe manga. In the realm of international G.I. Joe comics, most countries received just simple reprints of the Marvel comics in their own native language. But a few countries did put out their own original stories. Most people think of the Marvel UK's Action Force line or the Battle Action Force predecessor. There's original stories, a lot of them out there, but there actually were a few other countries that put them out. I found original stories from South America, from Germany, even China. But what I'm talking to you about today is from Japan. Now, when you think about comics in Japan, you think manga, and yes, there was G.I. Joe manga. Most people, when they think about it, if they know about it at all, might think of this thing. I've heard of it referred to as the G.I. Joe Takara comic catalog. I'm not quite sure what the official title is for this. I don't read Japanese. The guide itself, you can tell, is fairly small. It's, about palm size, kind of a digest thing. This is really more a book that covers the animation and the toy line. Sort of a pocket guidebook, if you will. But yes, there is a manga short story included in here. You can see right there is the title page, and it goes on for a little while telling, I think it's an original story. I haven't actually, read it. It's actually got some pretty good art in it. It is, fairly 80s style, manga style, so, it's very era correct. 1986, 87-ish. When this would have come out. But that's not the only thing. Between September of 1986 and February of 1987, Comic Bomb published its monthly issues. It looks like this, very large, very thick, and within this is a G.I. Joe manga. Now I know over here, when you think of manga, you might think of something like this, small book, just one title. And it's true, you can buy stuff like this over in Japan. This is be considered a tankobon. But what it really is more analogous to a trade paperback. Most of the time, comics in Japan come out like this. One general subject and several titles released all at once. Possibly weekly, possibly monthly. G.I. Joe came out monthly. And was in the titles of Comic Bomb. I have here the February 1987 issue. So as near as I can tell, it is the last of the manga titles. But you can see here the title page and more along here. It's the actual storyline. See, they have an original hero on the Joe team and an original villain on the Cobra team. The Cobra guy looks, more like Robo Joe than anything else. Fun story. I do wish it would get translated. Again, I can only kind of guess at what's going on just by looking at the action on the page. But it is a really nice art style on there. What's, interesting about this is that there was a Transformers manga as well, and those have just started being translated into English and released over here. So it would be nice to get the G.I. Joe manga released as well. Unfortunately, since it's only a few months worth, it'd probably only take up one volume, but if we even got that one volume published, that would be, something of a victory for me. Now, I also have August 1986 and April 1987 Comic Bomb releases. These don't have the manga in them, but they still do have something on G.I. Joe. This August 86 one is sort of like an introduction to the animation series as a whole, as well as, a look at some of the toys. So it's kind of like an introduction to the G.I. Joe Real American Hero mythos to the kids. Whereas this April 1987 title has more of a page on customs you can make, like a custom Hiss tank with the Wolverine missile pods, or Zartan in a different costume. Actually kind of nice seeing official endorsement of custom figures. In addition to that, I also have these TV magazine issues. Now, the magazines themselves don't have much going on G.I. Joe-wise, but there is some G.I. Joe stuff in them as well. Take, for instance, this title right here. It's September, I think. There's this little page spread on the toys and the comic, and what's great is these are actually stills from the Takara toy commercials up top. So you've got some of limited color paneling discussion over here, full panel page. And then you get some original art spreads. I think these might be more story pages than anything else. This one with a December on it has this great spread with a rattler in the foreground. And then the next page is a kid with the toy line in front of him. I think the winner on his shirt indicates this is probably a contest of some kind where you could win the toys. This is the October issue, and curiously it actually has a chapter of Transformers manga in it, which actually we've checked, Patrick and I have looked up, is featured in the newly released volume of the Transformers manga. G.I. Joe wise though, it just seems to be sort of a feature on the Skyhawk. You can see some images as it appears in the cartoon, as well as a picture of the toy itself. Again, limited color on here, but more than you get with a regular manga. So if you're looking to buy some of this manga, the thing to keep out for is we actually kind of have two ways of finding out, even if you don't speak Japanese. First, you want to look in this February 87 issue with the manga in it. You can look at the back, and that for some reason is where the index is. And, you know, it's a mess of Japanese that people like us have no hope of reading. But if you notice right there is G.I.Joe. And the G and the I is actually a Roman alphabet, which makes sense given that the toy line itself has G and I spelled out in a Roman alphabet. So if you can spot that in your index, then you'll find that there's a G.I. Joe feature in it as well. Now, the second way you can tell if G.I. Joe is in the issue, if you don't have a photo of the index, is by checking the cover. Now, with the issues with the manga inside, it's a little trickier to find, but there will be a character on the cover. You can see it's sort of a mass of faces. These are all characters from the mangas contained within, and right there in the corner, that is their original Japanese character from the manga. You can see he's wearing a helmet with the Japanese G.I. Joe logo on there. With other issues, it's a little trickier. For instance, this special issue, but if you look right up top right there, there's Duke hiding right in the corner. So a good eagle eye can spot that there might be G.I. Joe in the picture, even if the title isn't, you know, written on the page itself. So that is the G.I. Joe manga in a nutshell. We did have a few chapters released in Japan. I'm still tracking them all down. They're actually pretty difficult to come by, given that they're about approaching 40 years old at this point, and they're comics that generally get tossed out because it's pretty cheap paper. When the tankobon comes out, people generally, you know, flock to that one instead. It's less space, it's just the titles you want. So these are kind of thrown out by the wayside, harder to come by these days, but still possible. What do you think? Interested in knowing more about the foreign G.I. Joe comics? Would you like to see some of the other original stories around the world? Comment, like, and subscribe.
Thanks for watching this episode of Articulated Points. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'd appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more about some of the toys featured in this episode, or want to follow us on social media, links are in the description below this video.